Um, hopefully everybody else gets a minute to jump back in. And we'll kick it off and start rolling. The good news, we don't even need the full 2 hours probably, but at least we got it if we need it.
Roger that.
How's things in Alaska?
Good. It's getting warm. I just got back from North Carolina, which was nice.
How long a flight is that?
10 hours. A couple stops.
Whew.
Yeah. It's 10 hours anywhere, man.
Well, where you guys are, yes. I'm assuming we're gonna record this too.
Oh, yeah, I'm recording right now.
Fantastic. All right. Well, hopefully people will jump back in. If not, we'll get going and
yeah,
they can hop in or watch it later. I'm assuming you send these out once we're
I'm gonna send them out.
Recording. Okay.
Yeah.
Send me the recording too, and I'll chop it up into some content.
Okay.
And send you some. I'll create a Google Drive and put some video in there. So if you guys want to use some short form or the whole full video, we can do that too.
Okay. You see my video on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have it somehow selected, so I only see you. So, which is good.
That's the gallery. That's the gallery view, or you have it on speaker view.
I have it on gallery now, but it's just showing.
Yeah, I have it on gallery.
Yeah. All right, let's get going, and then I'll email them and get them back on. So, welcome to EXP MilNet Alaska's VA Masterclass with Jason Steyer from Envoy Mortgage Now. Congratulations on the move.
Thank you, sir.
We thought it would be prudent to have this masterclass, as all of the talk right now around town is about the NAR settlement and how we're going to move forward as a brokerage, and the assumptions that working with veterans would just be like everyone else, and we know that's not true. And there's a lot of rumor and hearsay going around out there, a lot of misinformation, and we wanted to clear that up for you guys so that when you're representing military and veteran clients, you have the straight poop and you know exactly where you stand, so that your clients have a big seat at the big grown-ups table, right? So they are not disadvantaged at the negotiation table, which happens so often with veteran clients. So Jason volunteered to come here and tell us the latest on the NAR settlement and how it's going to impact veterans, so that you know, and the more you know, the better you're going to be representing. So I hand it off to Jason. Thank you very much for being here, and I'm excited about the class.
I appreciate you having me as always. These are, this topic is obviously the hot button in real estate right now, especially if any of you guys spend any time or have spent time on social media. It is, I don't know, it is a powder keg. There's 1,000 different opinions on 1,000 different things, and there's the sky is falling, and then there's the people who don't care, and everything in between. And then you get to the veteran piece. Then you get to people who serve the veteran community, or around military installations or wherever that is. And you also get those varying degrees of what they think might happen, or what they think the VA should do, or all these different avenues that they go down. Some of them are pure entertainment. Some of them are valid. You got to be able to, I don't try to pay much attention to it, to be honest with you, but sometimes when I need a break from reality, I'll go into these groups and observe the chaotic crazy that's in there. But I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to talk through some things. before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, I don't know if, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that May is Military Appreciation Month. Okay. It is not, for those of us who live in this world, that's 12 months out of the year. But this is the official month that is recognized where we show appreciation for those who are serving this country. So something you might think about, I'll give you this little freebie along with some of the other stuff. I created this, this military home ownership initiative. And I am trying to have as many conversations as I can with anybody of influence in the military community to encourage them to educate their soldiers, their airmen, their Marines, to be able to become homeowners if they're not, and why they should, and why it's so important. Talking about affordability, obviously that's a hot topic with in inflation and things like that. But I would highly encourage you to use this. You can call it whatever you'd like, something similar. You can call it exactly this. I do not care. But May is that month. May is the time people's ears will perk up for whatever reason to be able to do that. But I would highly recommend that you do. It'll give you a great platform. And we'll get into a little bit of that at the end of this, where we talk about some things. But because still, this is an up-to-date statistic, right? This is the real challenge in our world, not the NAR, not the proposed settlement, not all of the lawsuits and the things that we think we're going to do from our armchair lawyer perspective. This is the real problem. So we, as a community, have to figure out how we come together to be able to push past this number. And I promise you, it is not focusing on what the VA should or shouldn't do, or what the NAR should or should not do. The truth does not lie with those two entities. The truth lies about how you go into your communities and serve people who are serving the country and who have served the country and their spouses. Okay. Friday, give you a free marketing tip. 2 days from now, National Military Spouse Appreciation Day. My coach to you: host buy a spouse a coffee event in your local coffee shop. Invite those spouses into your purview. Love on them, appreciate them, give them high fives, whatever it is. But this is a great opportunity to rally those spouses in your communities. Now, my two teammates are military spouses, so I can say this with 100% certainty: the spouse community is as thick as thieves, right? They are tight knit. So it's a good strategic opportunity to show them the appreciation that they rightfully deserve, and also tell them what you do and how you help military or veterans in your community navigate this benefit. Okay. That's your value add. This is what the good thing about the NAR is. It's going to change people's value. They're going to have to be able to articulate their value. Okay. So let's talk about the NAR and the VA. So I'm going to start at the beginning of what the VA says about realtors and veterans or military paying their commission. Okay. But here's one thing I'm going to say to you, is that if you cannot, in this new world order we're going to be living in, if you cannot articulate your value, you're going to have a really, really hard time. If you can't sit in front of a spouse or a veteran or a group of such and articulate how you're going to help them navigate through this stuff, because they may see it in the media. The media is horribly guilty about pushing their own narrative. We all see that every day. You got to be able to push through that. But if you can't articulate your value, if your only attribute is I can write a real estate contract, you're going to have a hard time. This is the world we live in. Okay? Because like the quote says, if you don't believe it, why should you expect anybody who's sitting in front of you to believe it? You got to be able to get these things out there. Okay? And Chapter 8 of the VA handbook, okay, it is our lending Bible, so to speak, says specifically that the veteran cannot pay real estate commission. That includes transaction fees or outright real estate commission. Okay. That is where we are today. Okay. If the VA were going to change this, huge if, they would have to go in and change the Code of Federal Regulation, which takes a comment period and subsequent approvals. It could be a year, literally, from now, because this is not a circular change. This is a CFR change. Okay, so it is like turning the Titanic. It is not very easy to. John Bell, who's the director of loan guarantee, he can change things through circulars. He cannot change the Code of Federal Regulation. Okay, so what are they looking at? This system was designed to protect veterans from paying more than other people, because they sometimes walk around with targets on their back, because typically they're very trusting in those type of attributes. This rule is meant to prevent the crappy people out there, none of y'all who are watching this or attending, from taking advantage of veterans. That's what it's intended to do. Okay, so look at it from the VA's perspective. Right now, this is still a proposed settlement. It has not been adjudicated or finalized. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, what if they go change it? What happens then? It becomes the wild, wild west. And that's a fact, because the human condition is involved in this transaction. Okay. So what they look at is what they're, and this is per John Bell. Okay. So this is a conversation that he recently had that I watched, and these are words that came straight out of his mouth. The VA is looking at the variances in VA purchase production. Okay. That is their goalpost. It's not Jason calling John Bell and complaining. It's not Steve calling John Bell and complaining. It's not anybody else calling John Bell and complaining. They are looking at the data. Okay. Because what they will not do, they will not change this guideline meant to protect veterans to only satisfy the fringe. Okay, because Steve and I, we cannot control what Mr. Seller wants to do, because what he heard on the news is he no longer has to pay a buyer's agent. We can't control that. And if that happens, that happens. We deal with it then. What we cannot do is, I've tried to have conversations, people like Steve, all the way to North Carolina at Fort Liberty, Fort Rucker, you name it. Hey, what are you guys seeing in your communities? Have you seen anybody do this? Very few have said, yeah, I've seen a few of the listings come up that they're paying $1,000 or they're paying nothing. Okay. So I'm going to ask, and this is a question you need to ask yourself, research you need to do. I'm not a veteran, so I cannot speak to this, but what I will say is that veterans are very loyal people. And if you have their back, I would venture a guess 9 times out of 10, they're going to have yours. And I've already been privy to conversations from agents who, hey, this seller is not paying any buyer's agent commission. Just wanted you to know that. Okay, we'll move on. That's the response. We're going to move on. I'm not going to take somebody that I'm protecting and has been there for me and screw them like that. Now, again, that is not a blanket statement. That doesn't ever cover everybody. Okay. So what we can do is just be better, right? Get better at your scripting. But right now, if you look at the data that John Bell shared, VA purchases are up 8%. 8% nationwide. Okay. As of April. So as of right now, we don't think that this is having an effect on the masses. Not to say that it won't have an effect on somebody individually, But as the masses go, we're at that number. So what do we do to be better? Right? What do we do to be better partners for these men and women in our communities to be able to serve them through the VA home loan benefit? That's the big question. Okay. I don't think it's going to be business as usual. Even somebody like me who's been in the business 21 years and served veterans all across the country, I'm digging in, man. I'm having conversations like this. I've got speaking engagements like this lined up for months because I'm trying to bring a little bit of calm to the chaos. And I believe that if you do the same, you will have a great more success than if you walk around and run around like your hair's on fire. Because what I have seen is there's been some real estate companies and some other industry people putting out some traffic as if they had a direct line to John Bell and they're going to make a change. I can promise you folks, that is not going to happen. Now, John will meet with people because that's John's job, right? John is the only director of loan guarantee that's ever had any mortgage experience. You got the right guy for the job. Okay. But he's going to listen because that's what John does. But he's going to formulate a VA opinion from the data. Guaranteed. Okay. And it may change, right? We might get some temporary relief or some other things like that. But right now, this is where we are. Okay. And this is what we have to do to be better. Okay. So how do we take that action and start to try to build a military focused business? Because even those, and I'm going to challenge those that watch this that are around military installations, that they may get a little complacent. Complacency kills, as the old cliche goes, right? I have been guilty of that. Like, this is on cruise control, man. It's on autopilot. Not now. Even those around military installations are going to have to go out and prove your value every day. Okay. I call it the value menu, right? Not the McDonald's 99-cent menu or Taco Bell or anything like that, but the value menu. What can you sit down with a buyer or a seller and articulate to them how good you are at this? Okay. To me, that's what you have to do. That's what I have to do as well. And I have to be better at it. Okay. This is why we have these phone calls, because it makes me better too. Right. So, number one in my book, I'm biased because I'm an educator. Number one is you have to lead with education. Okay. And here's why I say that. If you look, right, Steve earned this benefit. Some of you may have. If you look at what the military never taught you about this benefit, you could fill up a thimble with what they told you. Right? So even now, with the access of information that we have today, greatest time in history to have access of information, man. We got the whole world right here at our fingertips. And yet we still get it wrong every single day. Every day. That is not acceptable anymore. That's what you have to tell yourself. How am I going to make the difference? How am I going to be the tip of the spear and lead through education? So here's a coach. Take some time, sit down, and write all of the nonsense that you've heard, whether making offers, whether through your buyers, what you've heard from other people about the VA home loan. Make a list. Okay? Make a list and then figure out how to get really, really good at articulating that to your clients. Okay? So here's some tips. I'm going to give you 3 things under this becoming the expert. And I typically don't like to use that word, but I couldn't think of anything else, to be honest with you. So become the expert, right? How do we become the expert? You don't have to have 50 years of knowledge. Being the expert really means giving a damn. and digging in and learning. Okay. So talk about the common myths and the misconceptions about the VA home loan benefit, right? That a no down payment makes them a weaker buyer, that you can only have more than one VA loan. You can't have more than one VA loan at a time. The seller's got to pay fees, right? That the appraisal process is crap, for the lack of a better word. Okay. Figure out, and I'm going to share some data with you on a few of these things. Okay. So this is a good time to pencil, right? So talking about the VA appraisal. Okay. I know different areas are different, right? But here's the one thing about the value. Typically we'll get, well, VA appraisals always come under value. Well, did you know, Mr. Seller, that 94, as of March of 2024, 94% of the time, the VA appraisal comes in at or above value. Also data taken from a recent interview with John Bell. Okay, so that's where that came from. 94%. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to take those odds to Vegas all day long. I'll make a really good living. Okay. Even taking it a step further, because, okay, they come in at value, but I've had some that haven't. Okay. Did you understand the Tidewater and the reconsideration of value process? They will typically go, no. Well, I have researched this. I have a good team behind me that can help us through this process, right? The lender comes into play on this too, because I promise you this, I could line up 10 lenders, 10 loan officers, and 9 out of 10 of them couldn't talk me through the Tidewater, the ROE process, not line by line. And that's where it matters. The devil is in the details. Okay. But you can become a subject matter expert of those two things. That helps valuation. That takes down the barrier. Okay. The reconsideration of value process has an 84% success rate to adjust the value. That's amazing. Number one. Number two, it works so well that Fannie and Freddie, the conventional entities, are about to pilot programs that will mimic the ROV process for conventional appraisals. Okay. To me, presenting that data is very non-emotional, but it also creates a bond for you to be that subject matter expert. Okay. There was another stat that John Bell gave, and sometimes this doesn't apply to rural-ish areas, but the average VA appraisal delivery time nationwide, 6.8 days. 6.8. It was 10.1 a year ago. So they are making some phenomenal strides in the digital value of this process. I got asked the other day, do you think they'll ever go to an automated valuation model? And my answer is no. John Bell hates the AVM. And I don't like it either, frankly. What they want to do is pour more resources into the appraiser that they have to make them better at their job. That's what they're going to do. And then which that's the human element, right? We're taking the digital aspect out of it. Okay. So the other thing is if you can't sit down in front of a seller or get on the phone with a listing agent and talk through these things without hesitation, you need to do that. Because when I'm having a conversation with somebody, or if I get talking to Steve about a particular subject and he's informing me of these things, just like that, just rolling off the tongue, man, that gets me excited because I know Steve knows what the hell he's talking about. If I got to this and that and don't feel confident about it, you may get a different result. So be confident, right? There's a ninja selling system out there that Lee Brown does that's really amazing, that talks about a lot of these things, but it's what I believe will be necessary to be the next generation of loan officers and the next generation of real estate agents. I believe the old way of doing business per se is going to go away. And that's not a bad thing. Evolution's good. Back in 2010, when they changed the LO comp rules, you thought every loan officer on the planet had their legs cut off. Like legit, thought they were going to no longer be able to feed families or do it. And guess what? We're still here. We adapted, and the good ones adapt. The bad ones, they go do something different. When you're not in it to win it, you're going to find something else to do because you don't have, those of us who have been in this business this long, we don't have plan B. We got plan A only. And we're going to make it work. Okay. So those are just three things. There's probably a lot. I wouldn't say a lot. There's some other things, talking about going back to the myths, you've got, I had a guy the other day, perfect example, who's an investor. Okay. He was an investor, thought that the VA flip rule, or that there was a VA flip rule like FHA. FHA's got a 90-day flip rule. VA has no such rule. So it might be a different avenue for business. Some investors, flippers, they don't know that. They don't list VA as an option. I still talk to people every day and around military communities that tell me they're not listing the house as eligible for VA financing because it exceeds the conforming loan limit. This is 4 years old, people. I changed 4 years ago, and we're still kicking that can down the road. But it goes back to we are the army in this community that has to go out into our communities and talk about this. The minute we get complacent and think everything has been said, people who serve this country lose. Some might say that that's kind of a heavy burden, but I'm built for that burden. I know Steve's built for that burden. That's why Steve does what Steve does. That's why there's so many good agents around the country, but I wish we could do all the business. But we can't. So we got to go out there and we got to change the way people think. And this is why doing these classes is so important. Okay. All right. So I believe that building a veteran community and building a veteran focused business, part of that process is making connections of those of influence within the veteran community. Okay. Now, Steve is, you're the bar rep chapter for Alaska, right?
Yeah, I'm a VA rep president of the Alaska chapter, and then I'm
so I know that VA rep is about to, or is currently, they were just working through this in Washington, right? Will be the only veteran service organization that advocates for the VA home loan benefit. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we have some legislation, we're pushing it, but we're not getting the traction on the Hill that you would hope we would get. Go figure.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I saw Derek Barksdale was out there. Derek is an acquaintance. I met him in San Diego a couple of times. But so this is what I'm talking about, y'all. Think about this. There are over 100 accredited VSOs in the United States. Over 100. Not one of them outside of what VA rep is trying to do advocates for the VA home loan. Not one. I'm going to use the word disgusting. That's what I'm going to use. I think it is a travesty to the people who serve this country that they can't get people behind them, or they get roadblocks put in front of them for whatever reason. There could be a litany of things. Politicians suck, but I have no idea what it is. But all I know is this, is that our job, what we can change, is to go into our communities and look at any veteran nonprofits that we can advocate for. We can look at veteran-owned businesses, and they're out there. You can go to veteranbusinessowner.com and look at accredited, registered, veteran-owned businesses that pertain to the real estate community. Have a list of them in your pocket to serve the veterans. Hey, look, I do business with all veteran-owned businesses. Bam. Right? You host a veteran networking events, right? Veterans in business, a veterans business circles type thing in your community, right? Get them together once a month at a local place, talk about business ideas, how you can reciprocate business, how you can do all these things, right? Our job is to become locally famous. And I use that all the time. Our job is to become locally famous. So when you're in your community and somebody thinks serving veterans, your name pops into their head. If that does not happen, you are not doing it hard enough. Our job is to create influence. We live in the largest influencer economy in the history of the world. So there is no excuse. We got video platforms. We got all these different things. Okay, so think about it like this. Let's say that you hosted a veteran business circles event once a month in your community. That builds up over time. These veterans are very loyal people, like we've kind of established. Well, most of their clients are probably veterans. Right? So now your circle grows. Every time you make a connection, your circle gets bigger. Okay? But think about it from this perspective. Let's say you find a local grassroots veteran charity. Let's say they provide service dogs. I love dogs. There's one here in Texas called Patriot Paws that's amazing. And I took a group of real estate agents out there one Saturday to take a tour of the facility, to volunteer, to wash the dogs and all that other kind of stuff. This was 3 years ago, they still volunteer there once a month as an office. And they're so heavily involved in that particular charity, and not from a business perspective, but the people who work there, and when they do events, they give them opportunities to partner with Patriot Paws to be a co-partner in these community events. So now they're building influence through the charitable organization's influence. Okay, we got to think bigger, not smaller. Okay, you're using their database to expand influence coming from a place of contribution, right? In our business, we take. You do it, I do it. But this is coming from a place of contribution. The byproduct is they see your heart, they see how you love to serve, and who the heck wouldn't want to do business with somebody like that? So you're leading with advocacy. The result could be an expanded business, because somebody at some point is going to ask you what you do for a living. And your response should always be, I serve the veteran community through home ownership. Not I write contracts or I'm a real estate agent. Everybody does that. I'd be like me saying, well, I take loan apps. That's what I do. We got to think different. And so it's a challenge. It's not easy, right? And find something that speaks to you, whether it's service dogs or, military transition or mental health or anything. Find something that speaks to you personally. Mental health is always a big one for me, because I come from a family of post-traumatic stress. My dad, my grandfathers, my brother, everybody. So I lived with that. I want to make sure that brain health is number one on the top of mind of charitable giving. Actually, true story. Playing pickleball this morning. Yes, I play pickleball. With a guy, buddy of mine, 100% disabled vet, was in the Army, Afghanistan, 3 tours, got blown up by some rockets, literally got knocked out of his bunk by a rocket attack. His brain has been bounced all over his head. And he told me this morning, he said, man, I'm having a hard time today because, it's humid as hell in Texas. Humidity does weird things to your brain. And I'm like, okay, man, how can I help you? Like, what can I do to help you with dealing with this? It's not, hey, how do I correct it or how do I get rid of it? We're here to help people deal with these things. And so I'm going to connect him with some friends of mine in the brain treatment world to help with that. But if I didn't have those connections by being out and being visible in my community, I couldn't help it. Our job is to be connectors of business, of people. Write contracts. Yes, you're good at that. Be a connector of people. Be an influencer in your community, right? Carry the torch. I know that's a lot, but I know you can do it. I didn't think I could do it 11 years ago either when I first started down this path. It scared the hell out of me. But you can do it. I promise you that. Okay? So let's talk about the fun stuff. So I'm going to say this, type it down, write it down, whatever you'd like to do. Our number one job, number one, is to market. Right? Sounds very simple. Number one, market. You are a marketer first. Because if you do not do that, then nobody knows who you are. If you do not do that, people cannot refer you business. If they don't know how good you are at what you do, they cannot refer you business. If you don't have client testimonials advocating on your behalf, you're going to have a hard time, right? It gets a little marketing, and this is my opinion, this is my professional opinion. Marketing to veterans is way different than marketing to the civilian community. Okay, I'm not a veteran, like I said, but I have observed, asked questions, paid attention, saw people do things that were just downright dirty. And I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't really do that, right? So what are some ways that you can market yourself as a veteran ally? So if you're going to become a subject matter expert in the VA home loan, if you're going to become a subject matter expert as a realtor in all things dealing with the transaction for military families, you need to be able to tell someone. How do you do that? You do it through blogs. You do it through social media. And yes, you do it through video. Because typing words, that's cool. Hearing the inflection in your voice, that is the ultimate differentiator. Like social media or not, sometimes I despise it. But it also allows me to reach more people. That's how Steve and I met. Social. We connected, right? Because we had a common bond in serving the military community. Now we've become friends, right? I came to Alaska last year to speak with him and his wife and VA rep and all these. I will do that in a heartbeat. One, because I like Steve, but two, because I know where his heart lies when serving veterans through this benefit. Okay. We talked about the Buy a Spouse a Coffee event once a month. Host a Buy a Vet a Coffee event at a local coffee shop. I'm telling you right now, I do this, having these conversations with these active military people, having these conversations with veterans who are, man, maybe they're like my old man, and maybe they just like to sit at home. Well, he hunts, he fishes, and he sits at home. That's what he's really good at these days. He's 77 years old. He's got Parkinson's from his Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam. And that's what my old man likes to do. But here's what I have an experiment with him. There is a charity organization in Norman, Oklahoma called the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation. They help veterans with disability benefits for free. Okay. I know Dale personally, some of his staff, the CEO of the company is a retired command sergeant major, great guy, been in the nonprofit space for a long time. Every Friday, they have a coffee social for all the old vets and people who are active, people out at Tinker Air Force Base, all that. So I'm like, hey man, why don't you go down there and just, see how it goes. So I called my friend Colleen down there. She welcomed my dad in. He goes every week now. Why? Not because the coffee's good, but because he is around people who have experienced the same things he has. He's created an emotional connection. Even if you have never served like me, I can host Buy a Vet a Coffee event, get these veterans from my community come in there, tell lies, tell stories, talk some shit, and just have some fun. It is the greatest thing ever. But again, it's an opportunity to bring the community in, talk about what you do, okay, how you serve people like them, and buy them a cup of coffee. It's cheap. Okay. And branding. I'm a huge personal branding person. I love branding. You can see the things. You can see that gentleman back there hiding in the corner. That's me. And branding, I'll use a Jeff Bezos term. If you're not branding yourself, somebody else is. And branding is what people say about you when you're no longer in the room. I teach personal branding classes to realtors because, like me, I was that guy at one point who wanted to be everything to everybody in the loan business. And I came to a crossroads in my life where I decided, hey, it's time to do something different. I'm going to serve somebody who I love. Because every time I do a loan for somebody, I think of my old man. Literally. That's not lip service. That's 100% fact. I do this to honor him. Okay. If you have nobody that served in your family, doesn't matter. As a civilian, that was a big hump for me to get over. How do I connect with somebody like Steve? How do I connect with somebody that I can't really empathize with? I never went to boot camp. I never deployed to a foreign country. I didn't do any of that. What right do I have? Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. If your heart is in the right place and you brand yourself as the only place they can get a home loan or buy a home and walk them through that process, that is the ultimate flex, right? That's the ultimate brand. Come up with a logo, come up with a slogan, but I will say this. If you can go to my social media pages and you'll see exactly what I'm about. There is no mincing words. There's none of that. I'm me. You can see my love for this country and the people who serve it, this benefit, having these conversations with you guys and Steve inviting me here. I love this. I would do it every single day, all day long. But if you've got a veteran client or a military client that may be PCSing to Elmendorf or Wainwright or somewhere around there, and they say, okay, well, I'm going to do a digital deep dive on Steve. What am I going to find? Okay. You tell me you love to serve vets, but when I go to your Facebook page, I see nothing of the sort. If I go to your website, I see nothing of the sort. It looks like everyone else. That's not branding. Okay. So branding is very personal, as it should be. So if you have stories in your family, if you have stories that of friends, or tell those stories, right? Put it out there. Put it, come up with some ideas, and I will certainly help you through that. But it all goes hand in hand. You can't do, in my opinion, my professional opinion, you cannot do one of these without the other. Okay? Because if I'm acting like everybody else, I'm going to get treated like everybody else. If I prop myself up as the subject matter expert on walking veterans through the home loan process, it's a little different twist on it, right? So that is a overview of the things that I would do. You and I, we could spend talking here all day with this stuff. What I want you to take away from all this is some of these bullet points. Okay. I will share this presentation with Steve. He can send it out if he'd like. Obviously we'll have the recording for people to watch. If you watch this, you would like to spend some time with me one-on-one. Okay. This QR code will allow you to schedule a 30-minute conversation with me. I will walk you through branding. I will walk you through marketing. We'll talk some ideas. I'll learn a little bit about you, obviously, and do that, right? I'm a coach too. I do that outside of my origination business, but I do coach real estate agents. I do coach loan officers in this particular field, right? But I will be happy to help you do that as well. And then if you need my help or want to talk about home loan business, we can talk about that all day. These are the states that I cover. This is how you can get in touch with me. Okay. But one thing I will tell you is this, that my commitment is to give you all the tools. I'll give you the tools, and then it's up to you to go out into your community and execute on it. Because the way I feel about it is that if I have all this knowledge in my head and this passion and power, and I keep it to myself, and that veteran chooses a realtor that doesn't have their best interest in mind in your community, that's your fault, right? That's our fault for not being better in the community. I hear those stories all the time, but what it does is it motivates me to be better, and I hope it motivates you to do the same. So, Steve, thanks. I'll give you guys the rest of your day back. So we got about 30 minutes remaining, but if anybody has any questions, or if you do, we can certainly cover them.
Yeah, let's do some questions. First, thanks for coming out here, Jason, and doing this. The topics that you talk about branding yourself and becoming more educated and more proficient on the VA home loan, that's important to me. As you know, I'm for a lot of the same reasons it is for you.
Sure.
And at EXP Milnet Alaska, that's kind of like that's our goal, right? Our goal is to help realtors be military veteran, military spouse, military friendly realtors who are members to be more effective, better realtors, and more effective in the veteran and military space, and to be, I'll use that word, be the expert, right? So the more we do this, the better you all become at serving military and veteran clients, and that's really the end all goal of what we're doing here. Circling back to the NAR settlement and the VA. So I do spend time up on Capitol Hill with the VA rep, and we're going again in June. And I can tell you from doing office calls with congressional staffers that nothing moves quickly on the Hill.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk among brokerages that the VA is just waiting until July comes out and the settlement gets approved before they spring into action and change their lender's handbook. And I will tell you that book is based on CFR, which is rooted in law, which means that you can't just go in there and change it. So that's not going to happen, right? That's what everyone's talking about. Hey, they'll just wait to the last minute and they'll change it. It's not going to happen. It just takes too long. You're probably looking at least a year for any kind of real substantial change. And that's if Congress gets involved and starts pushing. So all of these different brokerages and EXP, same, they're coming out of the lawsuit settlement and trying to, I guess, manage risk by coming up with a system, a system on how we'll operate going forward, right? And so we went to a sales meeting, a staff meeting, and there was some verbiage that came down from up high for EXP of what we'll put on these contracts for sellers to. I'm gonna get the actual verbiage. I'm gonna put it in the chat box so that I speak this, right? And this is not just for VA. This is across the board. So in the chat box, this is the verbiage that was briefed at our meeting. There we go. So one of the things in the additional terms section of our contract, it would say seller to credit buyer X amount of money at close of escrow to satisfy buyer's contractual obligations with buyer broker, right? So whether it's a fixed amount, whether it's a percentile, whatever the case may be. And that works great with everyone, I think, except veterans, right? So, you could wordsmith this however you like. And you could say the intent is for the seller to pay directly the commission like it's now. But the way that's worded, seller to credit buyer, you're putting that credit towards the buyer, and then the buyer pays that contractual obligation, which according to the lender handbook, the buyer cannot do.
Yeah, I mean, there's one tactic that I've already used, and because the buyer can't pay real estate commission, but the buyer can pay over the notice of value.
Right. Yeah.
So if if you raise the price, it doesn't appraise the buyer, the money, and the seller pays commission for everybody. Well, the buyer can cover the appraisal gap with the money they would have paid the agent. You get back to square one. So do I like that method? Nope. But is it useful in those types of situations? It is.
Yeah. Yeah, we depending on, it's market dependent, right? So when a couple of years ago, when it was more of a neutral / leaning towards a buyer's market up here, you could, or even a seller's market, doesn't really matter, I guess. You could pay over asking and then ask the seller to credit closing costs or whatever the case may be.
Right.
It's just the devil's in the details. It's all in the verbiage.
No,
right?
I agree. Because I've seen, somebody asked me the other day, because I had this on a builder deal, and the builder was charging a transaction fee, which is real estate commission. Right. Well, it was paid to the broker, but it was paid on the seller's side of the CD. And the VA is okay with that because it's not charged to the veteran.
Right.
So as long as that is on the seller's side, VA is not going to take any issue with it. So getting creative, and I think to your point, becoming more educated on what this process is going to entail. And our job is we're solution providers. That's what we should think of ourselves as, not, well, the VA needs to change it. Well, that's understood. They've been talking about this at the VA, even at the VA Lenders Conference last year in May in Kansas City. They were talking about this. John Bell addressed this. He's like, hey, we're aware of it. Just know that we are going to maintain a stance that we are going to make veterans offers as competitive as we possibly can. Now, we have no earthly idea what that might look like. They may not change a thing. So we have to adapt to that. And again, I don't think, it's not like I wouldn't expect, for example, like if I'm sitting in, this is just me. If I'm sitting in front of a listing, or as a listing agent in front of a seller going, okay, 60% of the buyers last quarter in your market were veterans. So it would behoove you to do this because you're going to alienate 60% of your buying pool.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind would want to do that? Does it work every time? Is it a cure-all? No. But part of this process, going back to being a subject matter expert, is to be able to come up with market data that's going to prove your point. Not just, hey, I think you should do this. Well, that doesn't help me. Get really good at the numbers. Get really good at the data. Get really good at the scripting and being able to articulate that to people. Chances are you're going to come out on top. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important to get back into being like the source of the information, right? Be the expert. And then because so often there's, I don't know, there's a lot of hearsay in the industry. Right. And people just hop on that bandwagon and think, well, guy told me this and there we go. And so question everything and know the information so that when something doesn't smell right, you can point it out. You can say, hey, that's not right. That's not right. Right.
Well, and I think that's the greatest tools that we have in our tool belt in this industry is dismantling that misinformation.
Yeah.
You can have the coolest marketing tools. Well, that's not enough. You got to have the whole package.
Yeah, roger that.
Yep.
Hey, does anyone else have any questions? If you do, just write them down.
Well, if you don't now and you do, just let me know. Shoot me a message. Shoot it through
Renee's
Steve.
got a hand up.
Okay.
I'm gonna let her talk.
Perfect.
Renee.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey.
Renee.
Hopefully I didn't miss this because I had to take a call from my daughter who's driving across.
That's very important.
But I would love to see some more innovative ways as far as buyer agreements that are gonna be needed, especially regarding a veteran who cannot pay your commission. I've seen a variety of things, but I would love to engage in that more.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because, and what the crazy thing about this, and I do business in all these states. So I've seen, I mean, like in Florida, it's the Wild Wild West. I mean, places like Georgia have had buyer agency forever. Places like Texas, some places have never had it. So you're going to see so many different ways, or it's going to get a little kooky.
Yeah, I mean, it's already, I had a veteran say, I can't sign your buyer's agreement because I can't pay your brokerage fees. So now when it's required to sign that to see a home is going to be interesting.
So let me ask you this, and this is,
but-
I'm asking this because I honestly don't know. So even if they sign it, does it mean they have to pay it or it can be paid? Like through,
Well, my buyer's agreement states X amount of bananas are due. And if it's not being paid by the seller, we'll ask for it in a offer.
Gotcha.
But I even just had pushback on that where a buyer was like, well, you should just be happy with what they're offering, even though they already had an agreement with me separately for a different amount of bananas.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting about how people navigate that. Because I don't think it prohibits them from signing it. It just prohibits them from paying it. So
yeah, they didn't want to sign it because they felt they couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it was interesting. I think there were some other underlying things, but that was an interesting.
Well, I think getting clarification from legal counsel on the ramifications of that, or maybe a good response for something like that, because if they sign it and they can't pay you, doesn't mean, I mean, even the law states that they can't do it. So which one supersedes which? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting scenario to navigate. And I think I've seen, I don't know, Steve, if what the Anchorage MLS buyers agreement is looking like, if they pulled it back at some point, or it had, I'll look at homes that are covering that, or I won't look at homes, or.
Yep, we have a line in there. I'm paraphrasing. Well, we have different boxes we can check from that MLS form. And one of them says, we're gonna go look at this house, and whatever the commission is seller to pay all the commission. And then there's another one, if seller doesn't pay it, buyer to pay that box. I don't check that box for veterans. So what I do is I check the seller to pay the commission, and then I tell the veteran, if they don't pay it, you can't be made to pay the commission. Matter of fact, you can't pay the commission, so we're not gonna go there, right? And so we're just gonna pass on that house. So I set those expectations up front. And I think
it's a tough, it's a tough one, because then you have this fiduciary duty. Are you standing between them and the house they want? Ooh. So
yeah, well, I can't do it for free, and they can't pay. So if I can get the money from the seller, then I'll get the money from the seller. But if I can't, then I set the expectation with the veteran up front, and here's the reason why. And say I'm not going to show you houses that they won't pay, right? And until they change that stipulation in the lender handbook, I don't see that becoming an option really anyway. So I haven't had any pushback. I mean, they all seem to understand, when we discuss it. I think, if you come back and you say, this is why, I just don't want to not show you houses, but this is why, by law, you can't pay. So let's not even check that box. Let's just, do it this way and move on. But I don't know how the new forms are going to be, because I heard that the MLS is coming out with new forms as well. I haven't seen.
Yeah, I'd love to see them. I mean, we've been in this VA position all along, basically, but it just feels like there's more. I've encountered more pushback from my VA buyers recently.
Yeah, they've made it more complicated because of this proposed settlement. It's always been there.
Yeah, because of the media headlines and so on and so forth.
Sure, and attorneys are doing CYAs, and I look, I get it. I mean, nobody wants to go through this nonsense.
I know, and it's a tough one, like saying, oh yeah, well, if you pay over this, that, and the other, we can make this work. We got to be creative. And then I had a situation where they're like, oh, you should just take what they're offering and we're not going to do all that.
Yeah.
Even though,
And-
so it was kind of like, oh, well, interesting.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
your clients didn't value your yeah.
And I guess I look at it like, it's like the rate conversation with loan officers is, I mean, rates are all over the place. You can call 10 different lenders and get 10 different answers. And they are certainly free to go wherever they want to go. I'm trying to build enough value to where they stay with me. They might be able to get a 0.25% cheaper at Navy Fed, but they might be the most miserable they've ever been in their life, and they may not close on time. So there's that. There's always those things. And if, there's always somebody willing to do it cheaper. I'm not, because it took 21 years to get the knowledge in my head. I give people a good deal, right?
Yeah.
So it's, again, I've even had to get better at articulating my value, because it's so competitive in these days and everybody's at everybody and deals are harder to get, and coming up with my value menu. And I had to sit down and do the same thing.
Anyway, food for thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone else have any questions? And if not, thank you all for attending. I do apologize at the beginning for the technical difficulties we had with video. I am not a ninja on doing webinars, and I had to go back. I had to leave and go back out and change my settings.
Yeah, I had to Google the solution, if that tells you anything.
Yeah. So, but next time I've got to figure it out now. So next time will be better. We still plan to have, planned to have these webinar type events for EXP Milnet monthly, and all for VA topics to help you guys out in your business. So if you guys have any suggestions of topics that you'd want to hear about, shoot me a note and let me know, and then we'll line those up. Jason, thank you very much again.
Yes, sir.
Always,
I appreciate you having me on
always
and
an honor.
for doing this. Yeah,
Okay.
let me know what you guys need. Happy to help.
Roger that. I know you are. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You all have a great day, and we will talk soon.